So in my family, you get to get your ears pierced when you're 10. So it was Sarah, my oldest daughter's 10th birthday, and I actually don't remember, and it has to be as true as I remember it, what my plan was, but I do remember the feeling of very deep despair and defeat getting back in the car because my plan wasn't working. I was sitting in the car, down, and Sarah from the back seat, trying to be helpful, she's a helpful child, and she said, "Well, Mom, we really should have called Mrs. Bernhardt." So I hope everybody, when you've moved, have had a Mrs. Bernhardt. So Karen Bernhardt was one of my neighbors. Maybe some of you know her. She knows everybody in Lancaster County. And she lived here her whole life, and she had kids about my age. And everything that I needed for the first 10 years that I lived in Lancaster, Karen would help me find. And I had not called Karen Bernhardt before I tried to find a place to get my daughter's ears pierced. And Karen was an angel. I should be feeling very grateful to her. But as I was wallowing in my despair and defeat and having disappointed my child, I was not as charitable as I should have. And I said, "Yeah, you're right. Mrs. Bernhardt knows everything." Just in exactly that tone. And my daughter, who's a natural empath, who graduates from medical school tomorrow and is going to be an awesome doctor because of multiple qualities like this, says to me, "Well, Mommy, come on. You know, you're a doctor. There's probably something you know that Mrs. Bernhardt doesn't know." And so now realizing what an ass that I'm being, because my daughter has once again pointed it out to me, I said, trying to elevate myself again. I'm like, Sarah, I think you're right. And I think that everybody probably I've ever met knows something that I don't know. And I try to remember that. Just not today. And so we go, and we end up in the piercing pagoda in the mall, which is not exactly what I had in mind. And we get up to the counter, and my unconscious bias, which was not unconscious, it was pretty conscious, of this little waif of a woman who was tattooed and pierced. And I have lots of medical training, and those are not usually the people that are holding steel instruments nearing the skin of my small child. I was like, oh dear. But she was lovely, she was gentle, respectful with Sarah. Sarah sat down, no problem, and this tattooed hand and then this tattooed hand put the hair behind her ears very gently, and she said, "Okay, now what we're going to do first is we have to mark her ears." And I said, "Okay, good, that sounds good." And so she takes a little marker and she puts a mark here and she puts a mark here, and she stands back to let me see, and I go, "Oh my gosh, her ears aren't even." And she goes, "Oh, I know. No, not many people's ears are." I didn't know that. And Sarah, who gives me the look that she had even at 10, like, I didn't know that. And it was a wonderful experience. And I thought about this story recently because I finally have started watching Ted Lasso. So if anybody hasn't watched Ted Lasso, the hype is real. My husband, a notorious spendthrift, has allowed me to continue with my Apple TV subscription even after the first free month has expired. So this is he's involved. This is really real. And the episode that made me remember, and I don't think I have to give too much away to tell you this, was the episode where Ted, who is a football coach from Oklahoma, gee gosh shucks ma'am kind of guy, moves to England, and he's supposed to coach the soccer team, and he unexpectedly challenges, the evil, charismatic Rupert, who I think unnecessarily is always dressed in black. It's pretty obvious he's the bad guy. And he challenges him to a match of darts, right? And you think, what is he doing? This is terrible. And then he starts talking about how he is always, people always underestimate him. And he once, and Ted Lasso quotes Walt Whitman. I mean, this is a great show, right? So he says, Walt Whitman says that we should always be curious and not be judgmental. And he goes on to whoop the pants off Rupert in darts, right? And then he tells him how if you'd been curious, Rupert, you might have asked me if I'd like to play darts. And the answer would have been, yes, sir, I do. So in a world where I think we all feel like we're qualified at one thing, so with a quick Google search, we're overqualified at everything, we should always all remember to be curious, not judgmental, and things will be better. And that's what Ted would say.